let's get started because I'd like to have this not go all night as well. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Executive Committee meeting for Community Board 4 for the month of March. We're holding this remotely because the governor issued an executive order a year ago allowing us to do this. We'll get right into the agenda.
Can we Lowell,
first item is
Lowell, can we just let the, I know
Yes,
we only
sir.
have member of the public, but we let the members of the public know how they can engage in this conversation and how we manage that? Or unless you want me to.
I'm guessing, I'm just addressing, well, Hector is technically just visiting tonight. And Timothy, if you guys want to participate, please just use the raise hand function and we'll try and work you in. Although this is supposed to be just executive committee, we can open it up for comments if we get there. The first item of business is a committee discussion on vote from a letter from the Social and Racial Justice Task Force about the increase in hate crimes. And I see Viren, so I'm going to hand this over to Viren to present the letter.
Hi, everyone. The letter is pretty sort of straightforward. It's just one of those things that very unfortunate that on Tuesday last week, while we were actually talking about something that happened in our own district, something terrible was happening in Atlanta. And it's very unfortunate that it's actually coming out now a lot more than before, that many of these hate crimes remain unreported or underreported. So the letter pretty much is asking for information, assess what is going on with anti-Asian hate crimes in the city, particularly in our district, identify strategies that NYPD and other city agencies will use to prevent such future acts of anti-Asian violence and hate crimes, condemn anti-Asian violence, and commit to working with all city agencies, leaders, including the Community Board 4. And last but not least is to partner with organizations that, with experienced bystander intervention training, to offer free training to fellow New Yorkers and empower them to be more effective. So if there are any particular questions, I'll be happy to sort of address them. But that's pretty much what the gist of the letter is.
Anyone have any questions or comments?
I have two raised hands.
Okay, Betty and then Bert.
Oh, this is really a tiny little comment. The letter is fine, and I wondered if it should be also addressed to the New York City Police Department as well as the mayor, directly go to the police department. But that's basically my only small comment.
I think the answer to that is that we actually asked it to be addressed directly to, I'll read out the addressees to you. It's addressed to Mayor de Blasio, Speaker Johnson, Cyrus Webb.
Oh, and the chief of police, I beg your pardon, I'm
No
sorry.
worries, no worries.
I didn't get down to chief of police. Okay, never mind.
Sorry.
Should it go to the chief or should it go to Commissioner Shea?
I'll take your advice.
We typically address the letters to the commissioner.
Okay. We'll amend the letter accordingly.
Okay, Bert, go ahead.
Yeah, I understand what it is, but I've never heard of this bystander intervention training. Who does it? Who's developed it?
Okay, I wish I could answer you that. That actually came at the very last minute from Katie, and unfortunately she's not here to actually support that argument. But the whole intent being, I mean, internally we had some sort of back and forth on it, and then we finally started to keep it in there. But I'm happy to take any suggestions because I don't have a sort of, any particular argument for or against it.
I'm not arguing against it. I mean, it sounds great, but what is it? Because I've never come across that before. Has anyone else?
Dale,
I can speak to what it is.
Yeah, Dale, I was going to ask you to, your hand raised, please explain it.
Yeah, so especially with the Asian communities, sometimes between language obstacles and some fundamental mistrust of police departments, there have sprung up some community-based organizations that will undertake bystander training just to make sure that people who are witness to any kind of event, such as like, bashing or like, some disparaging comments thrown the way of somebody, can intervene without escalating, can not replace the police, but at least play a positive role in avoiding any harm that might come to people. So they have like a standard rollout of what bystander training is. That's, it's been around a little while.
From what I understand, Dale's right. From what I understand, it's bystander intervention training, but the intervention is very sort of narrowly defined. So you try and avoid physical altercation and confrontation, so you don't harm yourself or to the other parties around. So that's my understanding of it. And I personally have seen that actually taking place during last summer's protest in New York City, where there were sort of couple of different parties were engaged in some sort of an argument, and people who were protesting actually intervened without, just to sort of subdue the situation rather than escalate the matter.
All right. Jessica was next. Jessica, while you're doing that, please rename yourself.
Oh, sure. Sorry, I'm actually just in transit, so I'll do that as soon as I
Yep.
can. I just wanted to note that there's now a New York City Prevention for Hate Crimes department, and I actually met with them last week. And I don't know if they're appropriate to CC on the letter, but it certainly seems like this is something in their wheelhouse and something they're focused on. So it would just flagging it if you want to add them.
OPHC has already been copied on the letter.
Great.
Okay. Alan?
Just to cover, would it help to cite what Jesse just put in the chat as part of the letter, as an example of bystander intervention?
Sorry, Alan, are you suggesting we add that to the letter?
As a footnote.
I would say possibly it might at least give folks who read it something to look at right away.
Okay.
As they're reading the letter.
Okay.
All right, Leslie?
This is just, I don't know if this is for the letter or not, but I have learned recently that a lot of the problems, Viren, is coming when people, especially of Asian descent, call 911. There's no one that can understand them sometimes. There's not a translator or that, available. I don't know if it's for this letter. I don't know if it would be 2 lines maybe, but I know that's becoming a very big issue lately.
You're totally right. I think we are actually picking up on that in a couple of different ways. Jesse is actually putting stuff in the chat right now. We're going to invite OPHC to come and speak to us about that in terms of how folks with language barrier, how can they sort of reach out and what are the different ways of doing it. I don't remember the exact location, but Esther Lim, an Asian woman, she came out with this 7 booklets in 7 different languages. Just to explain to folks how they could, in the absence of language situation, how they can actually reach out for help. And I do believe, and I might be totally wrong, but Jesse can correct me, I do believe Link NYC has language too. And
Yes.
if not, that might be one of those things we might be able to sort of request.
Okay.
Thank
Anyone
you.
else have comments? I'll entertain a motion.
Move to adopt.
Second.
All right, all those in favor? Anyone opposed? JD appears to be frozen.
No, he's there.
Oh, there he is. Okay. Frozen
Yes.
on my end. All right. that looks like it passes. Anyone else, anyone not abstaining, not voting for any reason? All right, then that passes. We move, thank you, Viren. We move on to the next item.
Thank you.
Yep, the Empire Station Complex. I'm going to turn this over to the first Vice Chair, Jeffrey LeFrancois, who can report on a meeting that took place this afternoon, among other things.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Hi, everybody. We're in the midst of a state process to what they're putting forth a proposal regarding what they're calling the Empire Station Complex. So Penn Station and the area around it. Board 4 testified at the scoping hearing last year. We're now in the public comment period for the draft environmental impact statement, which will inform the state's GPP, the general project plan. Last week, CLU and Transportation Committee held a joint committee meeting because we want to present testimony next Monday evening at the public hearing. And thereafter, we will be providing the board with the nuts and bolts of a detailed letter that'll be adopted we hope to be adopted at the full board meeting and then sent to the state by the time the comment period closes. So I want to summarize for exec where the committees landed so that we can move forward with our plan to testify. Okay. MCB4 welcomes and is excited by the potential to improve and transform Penn Station and the surrounding community into a world-class intermodal transit center worthy of the city of New York. The board welcomes a bold plan for the area that prioritizes the station, transit, pedestrian improvements, and the public realm. However, the current proposal by the Empire State Development Corporation falls on its face at first step, as the proposal has no vision for the area or the future and is a real estate development plan, not a transportation plan. The state has failed to do the critical work needed to successfully improve and transform Penn Station. It has followed an outdated model to inform development and has not even waited to review and incorporate the Penn Station master plan, nor coordinate with the federal government or Amtrak. On financing, payments in lieu of taxes are part of the plan, but the financing is inverted. The pilots do not guarantee paying for expansion of Penn or the improvements. ESD has determined out how much office space they can build, but we don't know if the pilots will actually be able to pay for the improvements. So it should be the other way around. We need to understand what real improvements and expansion will cost, which then can inform the appropriate development to pay for them. And finally, if the Empire Station Complex plan as proposed moves forward, it would have a devastating and detrimental effect on the neighborhood. The current state of Penn Station and the surrounding area already cannot handle the day-to-day use of the station, and the public realm infrastructure fails to adequately provide for the people and uses in the area. If the plan moves forward with its long list of unmitigated factors, it will only make the area more dangerous, crowded, and we could add the Empire Station Complex plan to the list of planning failures for the city and the state.
Jeffrey, can you give us CB5's position as well and explain the coordination?
Yes, so I have been in regular contact with our colleagues at Board 5. We have relevance in this because of the area is being taken as the whole. It's not just about Penn Station, it's the area. They are submitting a 21-page resolution. We're in receipt of that. We echo a lot of what they say. There's major concern around overdevelopment, sight lines. You know, again, it all gets back to really not understanding the area before the state proposed this massive plan.
Kit, you have a question?
Yeah, a big topic of conversation in the joint meeting that we had recently was around affordable housing being a slice of this project. Just curious why that wasn't in there and emphasized.
So thank you for that, Kit. And I would note that the joint committee and myself really debated how we wanted to frame our testimony, which is we welcome the idea and we want to be really positive. And then here's all the reasons that make it really, really bad. And then in the detail of our testimony, we certainly intend to go through the things like ensuring there be affordable housing. and just so the exec knows, we did get the state to study affordable housing as an alternative on 3 sites. The original proposal had 0 sites considered for affordable housing. So now they're at least considering it as an alternative. The reason that's problematic is because it provides the option to develop housing. The developer could choose not to develop housing and affordable housing. We want to make sure that if this development goes forward, they're required to develop affordable housing. So I provided that summary kit, and I definitely will include a bit about housing as we further flesh it out. But the transportation and land use committees are going to get into a lot more of the granular detail, and in particular on that.
Anyone else have questions or comments? Okay, so this is the testimony that's going to be presented next Monday.
Well, that was just a very high level summary. The 5 of us will be testifying. We make quite the quintet at public hearings. So it'll be myself, Christine and Dale, Betty and Paul.
Okay, Betty, you want to add something? You're okay.
I don't know, maybe I didn't hear it. Jeffrey, are you going to just explain we're having a meeting coming up on Wednesday or Tuesday with the elected officials in Board 5?
Thank you.
I think that's an important meeting.
Thank you. Yes. In addition to the orchestration of our testimony, we want to ensure that all of our electeds, city, state, and federal, are in alignment on this position, which, Board 4 and Board 5 are pretty much in lockstep on this. So we're having a meeting on Wednesday to coordinate, share our thinking, share our thoughts with the electeds, and make sure that they can echo that in their testimony and public comments going forward. Because if we're gonna affect change here and either really change this plan to make it better or stop it and come up with a new one, we're gonna need a unified force to do so. Thank you, Betty.
Anyone else? Okay, so that's the position that the joint committees have, the combined committee has taken, and now is the official position of the board. I'm going to move on to the next agenda item, which is an update from the NYCHA working group. Joe, Betty, and Mike. Who's taking lead?
Why doesn't Joe go and talk about the meeting on the 29th coming up, and I'll just fill in where the RFP committee is going.
Okay. Joe, we're up to you.
I'm so sorry. Say again. I got a little late start.
All I did is introduce that we're discussing the NYCHA working group updates.
Got it. So the NYCHA working group has proceeded ahead. I mean, its main work is done and report is issued. And one of the things that happened is when the report dropped, there was very little publicity or really pushing to sort of make it public as to what the nature of this was. At the same time, there's been an RFP committee convened made up of tenants, NYCHA, and Citizens Housing and Planning Committee beginning to work on the actual body of the RFP with the tenant association. So the big issue here is I didn't realize how fast this was moving. It could be as early as late April that there are tenant meetings happening in Chelsea NYCHA discussing this. We had said as part of the whole public process, the community board would in fact have a large public meeting after the report issued to get community input about it, both from tenants and the broader community. We're planning that for March 29th at 6:30 as a meeting of the housing committee. And then after that, we will hear from the public. We'll have a short presentation by the tenants and by NYCHA, by members of the working group, and then really get public input and embody that into a position that the board takes regarding this matter. Questions?
Mike or Betty, do you want to add
Yeah,
anything?
well, let me just fill you in on the RFP subcommittee, which is what Joe just talked about. And he's right that there will be meetings, tenant engagement meetings sponsored by NYCHA coming up, several of them. But the actual RFP that we're pretty far along with now, and it's quite the amazing document, I must tell you. This is unique among public housing communities where tenants actually are writing the thing. Okay. Granular additions to this document, 76 pages right now. I can tell you that I wrote the last line of the first page of it to say that all future engagement with the development team, throughout the life of these projects will be at the same level as it was exhibited in the working group and in the RFP subcommittee's drafting of the RFP itself. So that lives on. We're going to be incorporating every single item in the working group's report in the next week or so. And I tell you, NYCHA is acting more like advocates for tenants than even the tenants themselves. It's an amazing thing, Joe, and I wish you were there to see them defending us, adding stuff that we're forgetting about, that sort of thing. In any event, the final version of the RFP will be released to the public, to the developers at the end of April. All right. They'll have to come back with submissions by July. And in the meantime, tenants will have a resident review committee, right, that will look at all of the documents submitted by developers, potential developers, and then the ones that are chosen from that group that the NYCHA team will look at from a technical point of view. All right. So let's say 100 people submit proposals. NYCHA will trim it down to say, or look at 30 through an initial interview process. Then finally give the resident committee, say 5 of them to look at. And at that point, everybody gets to say something, okay? And we've got a huge list of questions, all kinds of concerns that we've been working on. And it's impressive. I mean, it goes beyond anybody's imagination that existed at the beginning of all this, okay? So that's where we are.
So I wanted to note one thing for the committee and for the public, that the difference here is there is no subsequent ULURP. There's no public comment period. So one of the things we're challenged with as a community, as this process proceeds ahead, words actually matter. So as the tenants work with NYCHA, there's an incredible embodiment of the report that was delivered. If that RFP uses different words or slightly presents something differently, we will get a different outcome. So there's not a lot of back and forth public review. That's why it's important, no matter what, for us to have this large public meeting, discuss it, and then have the tenants and NYCHA during the course of this report back to the broader community on the progress. I feel it is very ambitious to think that the RFP is going to go out at the end of April. So Mike, although that's the right thing to do, that's really pushing the envelope. And in general, in this process, slow and steady wins the race. So just be aware of that as the.
Yeah, well, no, there are going to be some resident engagement meetings, okay,
Right.
along the way, Joe, along the way, so that nothing's missed before it gets out to the public, all right? Lots of meetings.
Christine,
And also the tenant association, both of them having meetings on this. So our pitch today was, my pitch was to advertise this thing as widely as possible. The more they hear the words,
Yep.
Okay, the more they hear the definitions of what these words really mean, okay, the more support there will be for it. So you advertise, you promote this thing like you're promoting whatever gets promoted in this world, right? As a promotional endeavor, right? And so that's what we're trying to do. And everybody's awakened to that today. Everybody agrees we got to sell this thing. We got to advertise it. Yeah, more so than ever since we had the recent group of people assailing everything that we've done so far. And it's a hurtful kind of review that gets out there to these tenants,
all right.
And I thought that you're calling that meeting, Joe, was in response to that. Is that true?
It's very much just to make sure that everybody knows the information and we don't get caught in half truths. That's the most important thing.
Yeah.
All
So
right.
I'm happy. I think everybody will be happy as well when you see this. You'll
All
be
right.
surprised.
Thank you, Mike. Christine, did you want to add something? You had your hand up.
No,
before.
no, I was asking for the information and Jesse put it in the chat.
All right. Does anyone else want to add anything here? Hector, if you want to join us, if you've got a comment, let us know. Because I know you've been watching this closely as well.
Yeah, Hector was at the meeting today as well. Our last meeting was this afternoon. Hector is there. I forgot to mention, sorry, Hector. Yeah, he's there. And Hector talks. Hector talks.
Can I I'll bring him up.
Yeah, can you bring him over, Jesse?
You know, if Hector can reaffirm my belief that we're doing well, that would be great. I think he sees it though.
Hector, you can have the floor. Unmute yourself.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. Yeah, as Mike had pretty much summarized, we're proceeding a little bit more too quickly in some regards, but we are proceeding nonetheless. We're proceeding cautiously. Big deal is to try to get more resident involvement. We're planning some tenants association meetings actually very shortly before the RFP is even released. And April is being conservative. I'm sorry, being a little bit aggressive, I mentioned, but I think the way we're putting this together, I think we're pretty confident that it'll be done properly. And if we need a little bit more time, then so be it. But I'm pretty confident that the RFP that's being put together is pretty good. So I'm pretty comfortable with it. And honestly, I think there's a lot of people waiting on this, not just the work group to get this done, because a lot of residents are really suffering out. You may have heard we have people on 19th Street without gas for cooking, and it's been a disaster and out for months. And this is just a prime example of the stuff that we go through on a regular basis here. And Mike, I believe Ali Chelsea had a problem with water just recently. So it's a usual situation here. But we got a good group of people in the RFP committee, and we're scouring through reams and reams of paper here in the documents, and we're trying to nitpick every little thing as much as possible. But the work group gave us a really, really good starting point to work, a lot of material to work with. So I think we're pretty confident that we're going to come through with something in a timely fashion and in a safe fashion.
All right, thanks for the update, Hector. Anyone else have questions or comments about the NYCHA working group and the RFP plan? Okay, then we're going to keep moving. Next up, Joe, I'm assuming you're going to take these. We have 4 pending zoning text amendments that the city is pushing.
Well, the problem is we know very little about them. Jesse just circulated them. The first one is accessibility for transit. Now, actually in our district, most large subway stations are part of a transit, transit zoning. So it would not affect us. The real question is, where could this be mapped is our question. So for example, in most of Clinton Special and along 8th Avenue, if you build a new building, you must bring the subway entrance inside. So that's a standard thing. However, let's take the example of the matter that came to us on 23rd and 8th. That subway entrance is outside the building envelope. There is no requirement to put it inside. And this proposed amendment speaks to maybe they will map a zoning bonus to do that. So that would be quite unusual in a low density district to map a zoning bonus for accessibility. I think there'll be a lot of pushback around the city around this, because the trade-off of taking something, especially like in a homeowner neighborhood, and saying there's a zoning bonus for transit accessibility is going to be an issue. It seems to be one of the items that is being pushed through. The health and fitness amendment is something else. That's basically the call that JD has made for years about why do we have to do physical culture establishments. So that's sort of, it's like a modernizing that they're not massage parlors anymore. So let's change that. The third one is the open restaurants. This is about really putting into the zoning text the curbside dining. So that's a whole policy discussion to have. And then Fresh 2, Jesse and I looked at it. It does not seem to be mapped anywhere in our district. So we're really talking about 3 out of the 4. And Jesse, tell me if I'm wrong, we haven't gotten much more information than that, right?
No, we haven't. And that's, I mean, yeah,
That's the concerning part.
That's the concerning part. But I get the feeling from what I'm hearing through DCP is that these are all going to be coming very quickly, before obviously before the end of the election cycle. So, I think we as the land use chairs and obviously for the open restaurants thing, which has predominantly been put in, BLP and transportation, I think we need to think about how to prepare for that and coordinate that when they come in, because we're going to have anywhere between 60 days to 45 days or whatever it may be, if they're just text amendments sometimes.
I mean, this is de Blasio going out of business sale. That's what's happening here. It's going to get rushed through really fast. And usually when those things happen, they're not well baked in terms of text.
These are citywide too, so we're not.
They're citywide, right?
Don't expect, similar to the flood resiliency thing, we're going to not necessarily see a lot of district specific stuff unless we are going to be very early on clear that and try to fight to get that information.
I don't think they're even going to do 60 days because they're going to try and push it through before the end of the council cycle in June.
Oh, they can't do that. They haven't done the environmental work yet, Raul.
All right. Well, then I don't know how they're going to get this through before Blasio leaves office. Paul first, and then Christine.
Thanks. I look at this, Jesse, as and Joe, that this is the first time we've had any notification that a zoning text amendment is going to come to us. Normally, they send us the text and we have to scurry. So my feeling is that if there are 3 that impact Community Board 4, Community District 4, that we sort of assign them to committees now, and that we start preparing for those things to come in. I mean, we know what PCE language will change. We know the DOT language on open streets for BLP. We know, we can make suspicions on what they're going to propose. So let's start preparing ourselves so when it comes in, we don't feel like we're scurrying, and we can actually be thoughtful about that.
I think the biggest one, Paul, is understanding how the transit accessibility could layer on top of other bonuses or other districts. That's the scary one. Like if you just pile it on top of everything else.
Yeah, but on our land, and I know JD has been like this on Chelsea land use, we always say the same thing too. Why do we go PCE special permits after they've been opened? It doesn't make sense. So I think that we can put that one to one of the land use committees and just start digging into past PCE experiences and what was wrong and what was right. And then when they come out with the zoning text amendment, we'll be prepared to tackle the way they phrase it.
Okay, well, then I'm going to suggest, based upon what you're saying, Paul, that the land use committees divide these up however the chairs decide, the PCE and the accessibility. And I'm going to ask BLP to start thinking about the open restaurants text amendment.
And transportation.
Yeah, and transportation will,
Right.
the
I'd like
accessibility is going to hit your committee. And
the open restaurant too.
Open restaurants will as well, Christine.
Do we have any chance of?
Well, if we need to coordinate meetings, let me and Jesse know, and we'll get all the chairs together on one call, and we'll push this through. But I think Paul makes a good point that we have advance notice. We should make use of it.
No, do we have a way of inviting the people of city planning so that they make a presentation?
They haven't even told us what the text is. I mean, like,
what?
They haven't even, Jesse, all you've gotten is like a note, right?
Yes.
Not even like a basic scope of work, nothing yet, Christine.
Yeah, I mean, we can certainly make the request. I mean, I think
let's make the request.
You can make the request. I think they're going to get the same request by 59 community boards. So I think we're gonna, and they're gonna say we'll, we can push. We'll push as much as we can.
Okay.
Well, let's be the first one in with the request then, Jesse.
I'm sorry?
Let's be the first one in with the request.
Right.
Sure.
If they're going to get that request 59 times, let's be number one.
Well, the good thing is a little bit, I know that they talked about Fresh 2 being, it looks like Fresh 2 is going first. So, and that's not us. So we can hopefully.
Oh, good.
Some time.
Okay.
But I foresee
Right.
April, and just to be clear for land use folks, April, May, and June are going to be, we have individually, you guys have a lot of different things on your, in your pipelines, and then we're gonna have these things on top of it. So.
All right. JD.
Yeah, quickly, Paul and Betty, land use, we do have a number of letters about the physical cultural establishments, going back to Walter Mankoff, blistering letters about how silly this all is. So we do have some historical references we can check out. Thanks.
JD, if you want to take it at Hell's Kitchen, and then we can appoint Brad Pasquarello to the subcommittee on zoning text. Because he raises every time we do a public PCE. So we'll put him on Hell's Kitchen with you.
Sure.
We'll work this out. If we need to talk as a group, let's coordinate through the district manager. All right. Any other questions on these text amendments and what we know about them now? All right. Seeing none. Board chair report. That's me. Hang on, let me just move this over so I can see it. The ongoing working group updates for the last month. You already heard about NYCHA and their the upcoming special Housing, Health, and Human Services meeting next week to take apart the RFP process and make sure everyone knows what's going on. You heard about the Empire Station Complex Working Group. The Social and Racial Justice Task Force is holding a forum tomorrow on health disparities. And this Thursday and next Wednesday, we have our virtual social events to try and integrate the board back into being a board and not just a collection of faces on Zoom. Small meetings over the last month. Transportation met with Target regarding deliveries on 44th and 10th at the new Target store. We sent an administrative letter on that. Housing, Health, and Human Services, Maria met with Ryan Health and Project Fund to organize a vaccination day at Harborview. Housing, Health, and Human Services, Maria and Jesse also attended the monthly shelter provider meeting. And a group of us, executive leadership and JD on behalf of the Clinton Hell's Kitchen Land Use Committee, attended an initial briefing on what they're now calling the High Line East project, which is the extension of the High Line into Manhattan West. If anyone has any questions on any of those, I'd be happy to share more information. Christine?
Yes, I have a question. It is my understanding that possibly the the governor wants to extend the High Line to on 30th Street all the way to 9th Avenue.
Okay, that was raised. We pushed back and let them know that the Hell's Kitchen South Association had other plans for that land, and we are going to be putting them in touch with you.
Okay.
In fact, there were some emails that went back and forth. They were the governor's office, ESD was pushing us to coordinate it, and that's not our job. So we're just gonna make sure they have the contact information for HK South, and they have promised to give you guys the same presentation. We did share the HK South plan with them, so they know that there are other thoughts for that land. The main extension and the first part of the extension will turn left at Dyer and cut through that way. But they did mention extending it the rest of the way to 9th, and we told them to hold their horses.
And I'm raising that because in the ESD, in the Penn South complex, they are using this extension as a mitigation, which is really weird. So this is so, it's kind of getting used in multiple ways, and we need to be careful about that.
Well, they know they have to talk to you and get you on board. JD, were you raising your hand?
Yes,
Yeah,
I
go ahead.
was. I think Christine's absolutely right. It struck me at the meeting that the governor is just pushing this through with the Empire State people and just pushing it through without any consultation, not only with the Hell's Kitchen South Coalition, but with the Transportation Committee should be involved with this, with FIT. And I really feel we should be pressing our electeds to say, hold on a minute, you need to consult the people that are going to be affected by this. And I have a feeling the Highline people would rather work with the community, but the governor has said, just do it and forget anybody else. Apparently it's not, no city regulations are going to be, zoning is going to be applied. It's all the state. I think I echo what Christine says. We need to be careful. And it's certainly, the Transportation Committee needs to get involved in this, Christine and Dale.
All right, well, I can say that they promised they were going to reach out, and we've gotten the emails already asking us to connect them to HK South. So they are following up the way they said they would.
Okay.
And we'll stay on top of it. Anyone else?
Well, who was there from ESD?
Holly was there to lead, and then Marion was there, of course. And I feel like there might have been a third.
Marion kicked it off and handed it over to Holly for the nuts and bolts.
But Highline did the most of the talking.
Yeah. They gave it to Robbie. Jesse, district office report.
Oh, right. I have to do a report.
You wrote mine for me. You didn't write.
I know. Well, that's what that's what ended up happening. I got all caught up doing other people's homework. Sorry. So real quickly, I just want to go back a little bit to what Lowell mentioned, and maybe Maria can kick in, just because I want to be transparent. So we've been holding these monthly provider meetings with all of the providers that are doing temporary hotel shelters. You know, the purpose of that is to sort of kind of create an ad hoc, group community advisory committee, kind of concept. And so, but it's a little, obviously we're not getting into the granular each block association kind of thing. But so they have reported out, they report out every month. They do give us the number of complaints and reports that they get in from the public, and how they've responded to those, each of those issues. And they've also let us know when they are, how many folks are being permanently housed and also being transferred for other reasons, and also what local programming they have done. And so I just wanted to highlight a couple things. We definitely recognize there was Black Vets for Social Justice did recognize there was an issue with some folks on 57th Street and 10th Avenue, and they're engaging in that. And what's that is folks that are who had been transferred from that establishment or moved actually other types of housing, who are coming back and visiting. It looks like, it sounds like it's coming back and visiting folks. And so Black Vets is aware of that. They're working on that. They're making sure that, that there's no unnecessary, negative interactions are going on there.
Before you continue, just with BVSJ, they are linking with the precinct, the precinct around the corner to do patrols. They'll start actually doing walks together when the weather gets a little warmer.
Right, that was my next thing. Right, so the other thing we really were pushing on for 36th Street was a much more coordinated effort with the two remaining shelters, one on 36 and 137. So Midtown South is doing group patrols. Actually, they're in the car, and then the shelter security is doing the walking, and so they sort of dual up. And so that has, I think, produced some good results. And then a couple other positive programming things. One is that Maria already reported on last month, but we're continuing to actually deliver out socks and undergarments and things like that from our donation drive that we got financial donations. So that's still going out, I think, Maria, right? And we're
Yes.
working with each of the shelters individually and finding out exactly what they need. So it's actually being much more surgical, which is great. And then the Josephine Ishman from our board, along with John Mudd from the Midtown South Community Council, have organized a whole day of programming, predominantly for the Skyline shelters, but also all the other shelters in the area too. So they've done some pretty amazing things, resume writing, all sorts of stuff. So that I just wanted to highlight.
The other thing that I think is just important to note is that testing continues to happen
huge,
monthly. And with the testing is also now happening, the vaccinations are also happening on site at the relocated emergency hotel shelter sites in our community with Johnson & Johnson. And the providers are mentioning that they're seeing a slow increase in the number of staff and clients or residents who are also being vaccinated.
Right.
It's still pretty low, but there's an increase. So
I forgot to, that's huge. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention that. So
that's what I'm here for.
No, thank you, Maria. So originally, and they still have the hub for each borough. For DHS has selected a site for each borough to be the sort of the vaccination hub for their clients and their staff. And they were doing that out of the BRC shelter on 25th Street. They're still doing that, but they have moved to a provider offering vaccinations on site, like Maria said, and I think that actually has had a major improvement, both for staff, I think, and for clients.
And Leslie had a question.
Dale and then Leslie. Dale was
okay.
I just wanted to make everybody aware, in case they aren't, that the state lowered the age requirement to 50 starting tomorrow. You can't schedule yet, but I just got an appointment for Thursday because I'm under 60 but over 50.
Go ahead, Leslie, go ahead.
You look great for over 50.
Can I just have a little bit more detail, Maria, Maria, I could talk offline with you or Jesse about the concerted effort to vaccinate the temporary shelter and the shelter residents. Is that through do we know what it's through? Do we know, is it different for a provider? Is it a city? Like
it's
DHS.
It's all through DHS. Yeah, so I mean, it's the providers were basically, I think that the reality was that the model of having everybody go to the hub and schedule that around was just like anybody else. You can invite someone, you can give them an invitation, you can try to give them as much information as possible, but if they don't want to go, they're not going to go. And so the idea is that to bringing the vaccination into the site, along with the social workers and along with the testing, it's all right there. You're kind of giving everybody that information all at once. So, but it's all run through DHS.
When this is happening, Jesse, with the temporary shelters, it's going to beg the question next month, or the month after.
When is what happening? I'm sorry.
That if the temporary shelter residents and their staffs are getting vaccinated, the question's going to come up sooner rather than later about,
when they're relocating back to their congregate sites.
Yeah, I think that is clearly still on the big unknown, and that's still very kind of frustrating, because what's not only that, but I think more about like what is the milestone, right? What do we when do we know we'll be like, okay, is it X number of percent of the client base? Is it, what is it? And so that's still all they're all figuring it out. And I think that's universally, I think that's somewhat of the kind of, the big elephant in the room, and the frustrating issue is like, we're happy to see this progress, but what does this all mean about till getting back to the permanent shelters?
Thank you.
Very quickly, so I'm sorry that I went a little long. So you have the full board agenda in your Dropbox. You have the tentative committee schedule for April in your Dropbox. I really hope there's no joint hearings. I don't believe there are any more joint hearings for April. We have a lot of meetings the next 2 weeks that we normally do not have. So just keep an eye on that. And if we look at the schedule for April, everything is where it's supposed to be in terms of the scheduling. The way the month falls, it's just obviously the waterfront parks and environment is right after full board, which then means the third Thursday, which is housing, sort of it moves up like a little bit. So it's closer to the beginning of the month, but everything is exactly where it's supposed to be. And I mentioned into the chat that right, we're going to have the Office of Preventing Hate Crime. We've invited them. They've confirmed they're going to present. We are attempting to, as we always do, invite one of the precincts from our district. I hope to have the Midtown South. That is what I'm aiming for, because we've yet to have the new CO come and speak. And I just will highlight one other thing, that the 13th precinct held what they called a coalition meeting. And it was a big kind of, a lot of folks, a lot of people speaking meeting, and it was kind of unwieldy a little bit, but I thought it was very, proactive and progressive from a commanding officer of a precinct to hold such a meeting. And they actually had their entire NCO team and their EXO there. And so it was run pretty well. And I wouldn't say everything was taken. They didn't hear everything that everybody was saying, I think, but I do think it was the police asking for their ideas and the community's perspective, and from a variety of different stakeholders that were on the call. So I thought it was actually a really positive thing.
Okay, thank you, Jesse. Does anyone have any old business they want to bring up or new business they need to bring up? Patty?
Yeah, two things. One is that comprehensive 10-year planning process do we think it's dead in the water and so we won't bother because the mayor has said no way, Jose, are they going to do it? It's too expensive. And number two, I just wanted everybody to have a quick update that in Chelsea we have a handful of Chelsea Land Use Committee members and members of block associations who are going to confirm data on, particularly on office buildings. We have data on hotels, but just recently we got a link to a database for office buildings, and Viren, bless his heart, is going to organize that data.
And this is for the B and C office buildings as part of the governor's proposal floating out there for conversion from office space to residential.
Sorry, should have said that. Yeah, and it's also now the state senators are cooking up their proposal, and maybe the city has a different kind of proposal. So we have 3 proposals floating around, and we want to be proactive. And Hell's Kitchen got the head start on us, but we're gonna in Chelsea do a field survey to confirm the data.
Just want to note one more thing with that, Lowell. That is, the goal is at the land use committees in April, this matter be taken up because the governor's bill has been amended twice already. And it's clear though, it's probably not going to be taken up as part of the budget, but some version of a bill is going to get passed in June or July. So the sooner we have our position out front, the better. And our state electeds have been asking to know what our community board 4 position is.
Right, and we did have a preliminary meeting on that with the state electeds that Brad was actually involved with. Jesse?
Just to clarify then, are we still on track though to be having something ready for this upcoming full board, or are we holding over and having further discussion? And
the full board letters already will go out for review tomorrow. Jesse, already done.
Okay.
It's the next step of this. As we keep getting these changes, we have to respond to what the changes are.
And we won't have all our data collected by the next community board meeting for Chelsea.
No, that's fine. I just wasn't clear in terms of the agenda, how we wanted to list it onto the agenda. So that's fine.
There's a letter that's going to go and then we'll have to update it.
Yep.
To follow up. Anyone have anything else? All right.
Joe?
I will
No.
Wait.
Joe?
No.
You
Under
wanted
the wire.
You wanted to put on the senior building on the agenda? I put it on under new business.
Oh, the one on 8th Avenue and 23rd?
Yeah, I thought you wanted to speak about that.
Joe?
Me?
Yeah, I thought you asked to put this on the agenda to speak on it tonight. The senior building on 8th Avenue that your committee reviewed.
I could just note that something. Okay, I'll do it quickly, Jesse.
No. I thought you wanted it on. If you don't,
no. It was complicated, and I think we're going to deal with it at full board at length.
No problem.
Headline, Joe?
Can
you give us a headline?
Yeah. Does everybody remember the zoning for quality and affordability from 2015? That whole thing that we went through? So part of that was you can get a bonus if you do senior housing. Senior housing at no cost to the city. In fact, one of the only time it's being used in our district, we have a proposal in front of us today because the city, after putting the program in place, never wrote rules about it, finally wrote rules about it, developers applied for it, then they decided to close it down. We have no idea why. It seems as if it's conflicting with various other issues that the de Blasio administration wants to promote. So now there is no more, the acronym is PFASH, Privately Financed Affordable Senior Housing. We will have one in our district. It's on 23rd and 8th, where the CVS is, the full block front, to be redeveloped as a 14-story building with senior housing in the building. We heard a very lengthy proposal, very complicated, but very full. And there were a lot of good things and some questionable things. And the committee took a position to support it under a bunch of conditions. That's about the headline.
Thank you, Joe, because that all of a sudden what you just said explains what I've been seeing up and down 23rd Street. I've been seeing flyers posted on lampposts and all over, apply for this privately supported, whatever.
No, those posters are our posters saying come to the housing committee meeting.
Oh, those are ours.
Yes.
The fine print. Oh, I thought it was for people to apply already. Oh, okay.
That would be a couple of years from now.
Maybe ready then. Yeah.
Joe, it's the entire block, 23rd to 24th on the east side of 8th?
Yes. The entire two-story structure with the New York Sports and the ground floor.
Right.
CVS used to be Woolworths, that whole block front.
Yeah, by the way, just that block front was started construction in 1929. And they were going to build a high rise. But then, what happened? The crash. They ran out of money. So they figured temporarily we'll just do 2 or 3 floors. But the foundation is there already.
The building has 3 cellars. 3 cellars.
Yeah, one was the Gap and one was CVS.
So they had foresight in 1929.
Yeah, it was a Gap long after it was a Woolworths, but I do remember the Woolworths. Actually, it was a Lampston's.
Oh, Lampston's?
Lampston's when I first moved to Chelsea.
Yep.
Sounds like plenty of room for bike storage with the cellars, so that's a good.
Oh yeah, for the seniors' bikes.
All right.
Can I move to adjourn? No, I'm just kidding.
No. Dale had his hand up.
No, just real quick, there seems to be some community organizing against that project, which I don't know what it seems to be a density argument. I don't know how deep or organized it is. But
Yeah, most of the public that showed up was concerned because the bonus takes the building from 14 stories to 16 stories, from 165 feet. The majority of people opposing it were from 300 West 23rd, and that building is 25 stories. It seemed to be, it was a lot about the views will be lost if the building is built across the street, and how could a dense building be built on the corner of a wide street and a wide avenue? So it was a little bit hard to.
But it wasn't about the residents, it was about the building itself, the building envelope.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, no, also people said it was a bad place for seniors. I'm like, Penn South is across the street. Yeah, I'm sorry. I apologize. It was a little odd.
I'm a senior.
Marty, were you raising your hand or just waving?
I'm just saying I'm a senior and I live at Penn South.
In case anyone forgot that.
Okay.
Anyone else? Going once, going twice, meeting adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you, Lowell.
Bye-bye.
Thanks,
Bye.
everybody.
Good night.
Good luck, Dale.